Hello, in this video, we'll discuss the provisions relating to the place of supply of services. The same are governed under Section 12 of the IGST Act, where both service provider and service recipient are located in India. Why there is a relevance of the concept of place of supply of services? Because in India, we are having dual GST. That is, state government and also central government's revenue is involved. Had we talked only about the single levy, then place of supply provision would have been important only in case of import and export. The test given under a law is to determine the nature of transaction. That is whether it is interstate or intrastate. The test is if the location of the supplier and the location of the recipient are in different state, then the transaction is interstate supply and the IGST is leviable. If the location of the supplier and the location of the recipient of the service are in the same state, then that transaction is intrastate transaction and CGST plus SGST is leviable or UTGST. With CGST, there is always SGST or UTGST. There cannot be a situation where only CGST is levied. With IGST, there is no plus. Okay, now let's move ahead to determine the place of supply of services, the general rule. In case the first question that we will ask in place of supply of services is where is the location of the recipient of service? In case of place of supply of goods, we check where the goods are moving or the physical location of the goods. However, that is possible because in case of goods, it is intangible. Services are essentially intangible. Therefore, we ask the first question is where is the location of the recipient of service, and that is the place of supply. In case of a registered recipient, the GST number of the recipient, from the GST number of the recipient, you can easily determine the place of supply. For example, if the GST number starts with 29, it means the recipient of service is in Karnataka, or 27, it means it means that recipient of service is in Maharashtra. Let's take an example. Let's take one example that I am a consultant. My office is in Mumbai. My GST number start with 27, Maharashtra. I defended a case of a client who is in Tamil Nadu. I defended a case which is in Delhi tribunal. In this case, the place of supply of service is Tamil Nadu. Look at the place of recipient of service. My office is in Mumbai. I did the work in Delhi. All that is irrelevant. And that is correct also. When I mention the place of supply as Tamil Nadu, the registered client is eligible to take the credit of the GST. And the GST, the basic principle is seamless flow of credit. It is a destination based tax. Had I mentioned the place of supply as Delhi, Tamil Nadu, the person who is in Tamil Nadu, recipient, would not be eligible for the input tax credit. Therefore, you have to see where is the location of the recipient of service. This is a general rule. In case of B2B transaction, it is simple because the GST number, the first two digits represent the state code, and that will determine the place of supply of recipient. However, if the recipient of service is unregistered, then the test is see the address on record. Let's take an example that there is a person, unregistered person, who comes from Gujarat to Mumbai to give a classified ad. The newspaper agency, the newspaper agency is in Mumbai. So the place of supplier is Maharashtra. Recipient is Gujarat. You will charge IGST as interested transaction. However, you should get some documentary proof which will establish that the recipient is from Gujarat, because the administration of the tax is the location of the service provider. Suppose tomorrow the officer asks why you charge IGST and mention the place of supply as Gujarat and float the tax to the Gujarat government, and why not to Maharashtra by mentioning CGST, SGST in place of supply as Maharashtra, then you should have some documentary proof which will establish that the location of the recipient is Gujarat, some Aadhaar card proof, some proof. Now the third step or the third stage, we can say, is that address on record is not available. The location of the recipient is unregistered. Further, the address is also not available. Then the location of service provider is the place of supply. Okay. Now we discussed this, that the location of the recipient is the place of supply in general rule. But what is the location of the service recipient? The person, they have given a definition in section 2 subsection 93 of CGST Act, that the recipient of service is where the person who is liable to pay the consideration. Let's take an example that there is a birthday of my grandpa, and I ask the the person who is supplying bouquet, to deliver the bouquet to my grandpa. See, the service provider is the person who is selling bouquet. The benefit is received by grandpa who is receiving that bouquet. However, the recipient of service is me who is paying the consideration. The person who is contractually liable to pay for the service, for the goods, is the person who is recipient. Very clear. Place of supply. Now there is also a definition given in section 2 clause 64, the location of the recipient of service, that is from where he is doing the business, fixed establishment. Nowadays there is multiple businesses, multiple locations are available in different states. So the most directly concerned establishment or the place is the recipient of service, and in the absence of everything, the usual place of residence of the recipient is the location of the recipient. Now let's see some exceptions to the destination rule. What we saw, the general rule is the first question, that is, where is the location of the recipient of service is the place of supply. This is a general rule. Now there are certain exceptions. Life is not fun if there are no exceptions. So here also there are exceptions. Certain set of services where you will not follow the destination principle, but you will follow the source principle. See, the logic behind the source principle is that the states are saying that you are using my state's infrastructure so much, and because of that this revenue is generated. Therefore, I will not allow to flow the tax to the other state. Therefore, the place of supply is where that service is performed or where that establishment where that immovable property is located? Because you are using my soil, and because of that the revenue is generated. So what are the source principle? Which are the activities coming under a source principle and you will not follow the destination principle? Is that the service in relation to immovable property? We'll discuss certain examples relating to the services of immovable property. And hotel mandap keeper. So if the business is in Karnataka, their sales representative come in Mumbai and stay in Mumbai. The hotel will charge CGST as GST and will mention the place of supply as Mumbai. It is intra-state transaction, and if and the Karnataka and the establishment which is in Karnataka, which is a recipient, will not be eligible for the credit because they are not having the business. They are having a registration in Karnataka, not in Maharashtra. So the genuine business transaction, the credit will not be available in case of hotel, mandap keeper services. Then there are certain performance based service like restaurant, catering, personal grooming, beauty treatment, fitness service, health services. These are performance based services where the performance is actually done. That is the place of supply. And services relating to admission to the event we'll discuss in detail with the example that service relating to admission to the event, then service supplied on the board or of a conveyance. So in these cases, the source principle is applicable. And if the recipient is not having a GST registration at the source state, then he will not be eligible for the credit. Therefore, the government has introduced another set of services where the hybrid principle is applicable, because they also don't want a cascading effect. What is hybrid principle? Is that if the recipient of service is registered, then the destination principle is applicable, and if the recipient of service is unregistered, then the source principle is applicable. Let's take an example, the training and performance appraisal. So the student from Gujarat comes to Mumbai to attend a training. It will be a source principle will be applied because that student is unregistered. It is B2C transaction. The source principle is applied. CGST, SGST of Maharashtra will be charged, and it is intrastate transaction. However, an employee of a company Gujarat comes to attend a training like this. I will charge IGST of Gujarat and will mention the place of supply as Gujarat. This is a hybrid principle, so it is mix and match. You need to check whether the person is registered, then destination principle is applicable. If the person is not registered, then the source principle is applicable. An organization of event ancillary services, there is also hybrid principle is applicable. Transportation of goods, mail and courier. Same. Suppose a student gives a courier, then where the courier is handed over is the place of supply. And if the company's representative gives the courier, then the destination rule will apply. Passenger transportation services. This is also hybrid services. Now, let's see some of the examples, some of the issues of services relating to immovable property. Suppose the architect, let's take an example. Suppose the architect prepare a drawing of a building for a particular piece of land, identified piece of land. Then that is relating to the immovable property and the place of supply is where that land is located. However, let's take an example that the architect has prepared a drawing of a building for general, not to a specific particular piece of land. Then this is not a service in relation to immutable property, general rule will apply. On-site supervision security services, these are in relation to the immutable property. And the survey identifying the title of the immutable property. Then there is real estate agent services. All this is services are in relation to the immutable property. Now let's take an example that see this provisions of advertisement. Suppose the holding is put on the piece of land. Then what is the service received by the recipient is the advertisement. That recipient has not received a service relating to immutable property. Therefore, this is not a connection to the immutable property. This is an advertisement services. A general rule will apply and not this rule. Now let's take another example that a company is there in Nashik in Maharashtra. They supplied the goods to, or let's take an example that there is a company which is in Karnataka. They wants to export the goods. They supplied the goods at Mumbai port, and for temporary purpose they kept those goods in warehouse near Mumbai. So can we say that this service is relating to immutable property? If yes, then the the business which is in Karnataka will not be eligible for the credit because the place of supply would be Maharashtra. However, this may not be correct. This is not correct. We need to check whether that company is in Karnataka, is in agreement with the warehouse that you will always keep a dedicated place for me to store my goods. If yes, then only that services are relating to immutable property. If no, the warehouse is full. The warehouse keeper told that the warehouse is full, the material cannot be stored. Then that services are in relation to the goods and the general rule will be applicable, and that is not in relation to immutable property. We need to understand, we need to interpret the law in a correct sense. Okay. Now let's see some of the more examples relating to the services of immutable property. There are agencies who are providing document storage services. They keep all your invoices, important documents, and kept at a place very safe. They also give the scan copy of it, will give some indexed. So tomorrow if you want that copy, you just need to tell them that I want this particular copy. They will give you the copy of that original document. So whether you will call this service as service in relation to immutable property, no, the person who is availing this service, he may not be knowing that where is those documents are stored. So this service is relation to the storage, proper storage of documentation of, and then this service is not relating to immutable property. The general rule will apply. We just now saw goods storage services that if the dedicated place is available, you are under the agreement with the warehouse keeper that you will keep aside a dedicated place, and whenever I need, I will store my goods there. Then only that is services in relation to immutable property. Otherwise, that is not a service in relation to immutable property. Keeping the goods in a warehouse, the general rule will apply. This is one example I also put it, last example, that is legal opinion service, because this was a question asked to be that advocate sitting in his chamber which is having 3 walls, 1 door, and he prepared one legal opinion and given. So whether that is service in relation to intellectual property? No, that is a legal service. That is nothing to do with immovable property. So we need to understand in a right sense what is a service in relation to immovable property. We can say that the services are in relation to immovable property if they are directly related to the immovable property. Okay, the basic purpose of this video is to discuss these example to understand what are the place of supply provisions with example, so that you will know exactly which service will you call as relating to immutable property and which is general. So these are the examples which will help you to build your understanding and correct interpretation of law. Okay, let's move ahead to the another example. Let's take an example that there is a company ABC which is in Mumbai. They are having the business of purchasing the property in different state and giving on rent for the commercial purpose, offices, shops, etc. That ABC Private Limited is in Mumbai. They are having the advocate, accountant, administration staff all in Mumbai, and the different places they are having their property like in Delhi, in Bhopal, in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu, etc. Now the question is whether that ABC Private Limited needs to obtain a GST registration at the place where that immovable property is located and charge CGST, SGST and mention this place of supply as where that property is located. Is this a correct interpretation of law? Let's suppose that ABC Private Limited is having a property in 10 different states. Is it correct to say that go and do the registration in 10 different states? No, this is not a correct interpretation of law. See, as per section 22 of the CGST Act, a supplier needs to do the GST registration at the place from where he is doing the supply. Now, from where he is doing the supply is from Mumbai. The place of supply, see here, place of supply of business and fixed establishment. These terms are defined in CGST Act. Place of supply of business is defined in subclause 85 of section 2 of the CGST Act, which means a place of business from where he is doing the supply, where the books of accounts are kept, where, and in case of fixed establishment, where there is a permanent structure from where the administration staff, the technical accountants, etc., technical staff is available, is sitting, and from where the supply is made. It is incorrect to say that just because they are having a immovable property in Delhi, so they need to do the GST registration in Delhi and charge CGST, SGST of Delhi and mention the place of supply as Delhi and intrastate transaction. This is incorrect. The place of supply in this case is Maharashtra. Sorry, the location of the supplier in this case is Maharashtra. Place of supply is where that immovable property is located, that is in our example Delhi, and ABC Limited will charge IGST by making interstate supply. Okay. Now see some more examples like performance based service, which is covered by restaurant, catering, personal grooming, fitness, beauty treatment, health services. The place of supply is where that service is rendered. Let's take an example that there is a XYZ company which is in Mumbai. They are in the business of shooting for the film. They went to Rajasthan to do the extensive shooting with their staff, and there they appoint one caterer to supply the food to their staff. See, in this case, what is the place of supply? In this case, the place of supply is Rajasthan because it is performance based service, catering service where the service is rendered. And this XYZ Limited will not be eligible for the credit because they are registered in Maharashtra, place of supply is Rajasthan. So even in this B2B case, the credit is not available and cost will increase. Admission to the event we'll see in a separate slide. I want to clarify one point in admission to the event. We'll see in the next slide. Then there is a training and performance appraiser service. See, one point here I want to make is how you will interpret the law. We need to interpret the law by keeping in mind the objective behind the provision. Now what is mentioned here? Training and performance appraiser. Can I say that I am giving a service of training? I am not doing any paper evaluation. So this provision is not applicable to me because what is mentioned? Training and performance appraiser. Shall I say that I am only doing the paper checking, evaluation of the papers? So I am not giving any training and this provision is not applicable to me? No, this is not a correct interpretation of law. We need to keep in mind the objective behind making this provision. These provisions are relating. So we need to read this provision as training or performance appraisal. This and is to be read as or. Okay, we need to interpret the law in a correct spirit by keeping in mind the objective behind this provision. Now let's take the example of admission to the event. See what is mentioned in section 12 subsection C is the place of supply of service provided by way of admission to cultural, artistic, sporting, scientific, educational, entertainment event or amusement park. Stop here. This does not include conference. This does not include seminar. So, if there is a service relating to admission to the event of a conference, of a business seminar, then section 12 subsection 6 is not applicable and you will follow the normal provision, destination principle, and that business will be eligible for the credit. This is a point that I want to highlight here, that if there is a business conference, if there are business event, business seminar, don't go to section 12 subsection 6 because subsection 12 subsection 6 did not include business conference seminar. General provision will be applicable. Destination rule, ITC is available. Place of supply is destination, recipient. Okay. So the basic purpose of these videos is to give you the place of supply provision of services with certain example to understand the place of supply provision in a real sense. That is the only purpose of this video. What is the how to read the service relating to immovable property? That training or performance appraisal. It is not training and performance appraisal. If there is a business conference, don't go to section 12 subsection 6. Go to general rule. Go to general provision, destination provision. This is the purpose of this video. to give you the information about the place of supply of services in a real sense, in a correct manner, so that you will mention the correct answer in the exam. Thank you. If you are having any questions relating to GST, you can mail me. My email ID is catusharji@gmail.com, or you can call me at my cell. My cell number is 8080980684 between 9:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. Thank you.